Okay, hi. So a couple of people asked for a mini lecture on essay structure. So I'm going to try to do that. This is my full-time job, but my full-time job gives me access to a whiteboard. So I'm going to do my best to write small so I can fit the entire structure because I want you to see how it connects. I cannot remove this, so I'll have to write around that. Also, as you can see, there are two black dots on my screen. I dropped my computer once. They will never go away. I hope they don't distract you or bother you. Okay, so let's get started. Essay structure. Once again, please understand that these are the bones. Your essay should not be this only in the same way that you are not just your skeleton, right? However, you need your skeleton in place for your muscles and flesh and skin to be able to be operational in the world. The same is true of an essay. It's the essay structure. The structure is the bones that need to be in place in order for the essay to function well and to hold together and to have its shape. Okay, so we will start with the introduction. All right, so the first part, there's three main parts to an essay. The first part is your introduction. Once you are very comfortable with essay structure, the introduction can look a lot of different ways. And sometimes you have like a mini introduction before the introduction. Really, there's a lot of possibilities, but you do need to have a sense of what must be introduced in the essay before you start to veer away from this particular structure. So, the things your reader needs to know at the beginning of an essay are three things. I'm already writing too big. The hook, which I think is optional. Background information. And thesis. I am going to put this all in caps. Man, it's been a long time since I wrote on the board. Thesis statement. That's all in caps because that is super, super important. I'm so sorry you can't see this. There. Okay. So, the hook. This is your attention grabber. It gets your reader ready and primed for what you're going to be writing about. It also grabs their attention. The important thing about the hook is the hook can be kind of a gimmick. So if you are a person who's starting to use a quotation as a hook or asking a question, if you need that to get yourself into the essay, to get yourself started with it, use it and then take it out. We don't want to use those kind of traditional gimmicky openings. I'd rather you not have a hook than have a hook that is a little bit immature, However, it's a good way to get yourself into the essay too. So sometimes you use a hook and then you, like I said, get rid of it. After that, we need background information. This is important because the background information, particularly for literary analysis essays, is any summary your reader needs to understand in order to understand your thesis. So if you are describing a poem and you want to write an essay about the way line breaks work in that poem, no, actually, scratch that. You want to write an essay about the way symbolism works in that poem. You need to introduce us to the poem, the writer, a brief kind of any information we need about the way the poem works or what it's about in order to understand why symbolism works the way it does and how it works the way it does, right? So whatever you're going to say in your thesis statement, if there's extra information that you can't fit in the thesis statement, that needs to go here. This will be easier to show you with an example, so I'll attach an example of essay structure as well. And actually, I think I have an old video going over the essay I'll attach, so I'll post that as well. All right, and then your thesis statement. The essential thing in an essay. Without a thesis statement, you don't have an essay, right? Because the thesis statement is the reason you're writing the essay. You're writing the essay to express this particular position on this particular topic, and you must defend it. So your thesis statement is an argument you are proving, right? You are proving that what you say about this thing is true when you write an essay. Okay, sorry, I got distracted by my hair because it's falling down the back. Okay, so that's your introduction. The other thing you need to know, if you are going to use a hook, the hook has to make sense to the thesis statement, right? It can't just be a random thing to get attention. It has to like have a purpose, and it has to relate thematically to what you're talking about in the thesis statement. Again, we don't really need to worry about hooks, but if hooks help you, use it and then decide if you need to keep it or not. Okay, so 2 we have is a body of the essay. Okay, so your body paragraphs really have 5 parts. I break the paragraphs down a little bit differently with a little bit more detail because I think that helps us stay organized and on top of it, and clear with our purpose. Okay, so I'm going to try to write these small. The first thing you need in a body paragraph is your topic sentence. Your topic sentence does exactly as you might imagine. Your topic sentence introduces the topic of your paragraph. Every single paragraph, just like every essay is about only one thing, your thesis statement, every paragraph is about one thing. So you should not have 2 large main ideas in a paragraph. It should only be one. And then the rest of the paragraph, the work of that paragraph is to really explore and support that idea. The other thing, in the context of an essay, a standalone paragraph doesn't need to worry about this, but an essay paragraph, a body paragraph in an essay does. The topic sentence must always directly relate to the thesis statement. The work of your topic sentence, the work of this entire paragraph, and as many paragraphs as you have in the body, is to prove the thesis statement, right? So you've got this big argument, and then your topic sentences are like your subpoints, right? Your supporting arguments, smaller arguments that fit inside of this argument and support it. Okay, after that you've got context. We're going to come back to that because context is hard to understand without the next thing, which is evidence. Okay, so your evidence for this course, your evidence is always going to be a direct quotation from the literature you are writing about or a paraphrase, but mostly you should be using direct quotations. So it will be a section of a poem, right? The place, if you're writing an essay, sorry, I'm trying to get those spots off my face. If you're writing an essay about symbolism within a poem, your evidence would be the pieces or lines from that poem that show that symbolism, right? The image in the poem that becomes that symbol. And you're going to directly quote the poem in order to do that, okay? That brings me back to B, which is context. Context is where you introduce the evidence, right? So you're not going to say the jar in this poem is a symbol of blah, 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 and then you're not going to just drop a quotation of that, right? You need to explain what's happening in the poem before you drop that quotation. So context is what's happening in the piece of literature before the quotation comes. Does that make sense? Like, it is the thing that introduces the quotation. And it's not as simple as the author says blank and then you drop in the quotation. You want to give some context of the piece of literature itself. What's happening in the story? What's happening in the poem? What's happening in the play when we get to this piece of evidence? Then we have my favorite part, analysis and interpretation. All right. Analysis and interpretation is something you are doing all the time as you read. As you read, you are interpreting. Like I said in yesterday's video about how to read literature, you always want to be kind of summarizing it to yourself, making sure you understand what's happening, but then you want to be interpreting it, saying why it matters, what it means, what's important about what's happening in the story. Why was this story written? Why was this poem written? Why are we reading it, right? Those are questions you need to ask for interpretation and analysis. In this case, within a body paragraph, interpretation and analysis and interpretation, you are breaking down the evidence. So you're really looking at that quotation you put in, and you're explaining why that quotation supports this topic sentence. Eventually or ultimately, right, this also supports this, right? Because if you're proving this, you're proving why this proves this, obviously it all lines up with this, right? So a good test as you're writing is to, every time you write a paragraph, check it against this thesis statement. If it doesn't line up, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't flow, then take a step back and really kind of reassess what you're writing about and why you're writing that. Does that make sense? I don't know why I'm asking that, as if you can give me feedback. This is a video. The other thing I want to say about analysis and interpretation is they are two different functions, but they do function together. So analysis literally means to break something into smaller parts. Interpretation means to say what that means, right? So analysis of a piece of evidence, you're going to be pointing to specific words, specific images, specific moments in that quotation. Then you're going to say that word means this, right? So they're two separate functions that go together and always work together, but make sure you're doing both of those. You can't just say this quote means this without telling me why and how and which parts mean what, right? And then you have sometimes the trickiest part of a paragraph is ending it. But if you get stuck on a closing sentence, always just go back to your topic sentence and kind of ask yourself, what was I trying to say in this paragraph and did I do it? Your closing sentence should kind of convince your audience, your reader, that you accomplished what you set out to accomplish. So when in doubt, you don't want to repeat your topic sentence, but when in doubt, you want to give a nod to it, sort of like check this against this. Again, this will be easier when I give you an example. Hold on, I just got coffee and water. Man, recording this is so much easier than teaching it to a class of seniors in high school. It takes like 12 hours to do it with kids in front of me. Okay, finally. Oh, by the way, when I said avoid a 5-paragraph essay, a lot of people would be like, okay, you need this, and then you need at least 3 supporting points. That's where this 5-paragraph essay thing came from. And this structure can be limiting, right? These, like I said, are the bones. You should not be writing 5 paragraphs. You should have more than 3 body paragraphs to support your position in this class, right? I'm asking for 3 to 4 pages of essays, double-spaced. I don't want more because I won't have time to read more. But in the future, if you have to write a very, very, very long essay, obviously you're going to have more than 3 body paragraphs. So you should have the amount of body paragraphs that you need to support this, right? There's also so many different kinds of essays that we're not even going to get into. But if we were writing a mixed genre essay where you were analyzing a piece of literature and also sharing a personal story about yourself, you'd have so many body paragraphs, and not every body paragraph would have evidence from the text necessarily, right? You would be weaving in and out of your narrative, your specific experience, through these more academically structured paragraphs. So I would argue that every paragraph basically follows this, but they don't all look the same, right? If you're writing about yourself, you're not going to use a quotation from a book. You'll be using a small anecdote about your life. Does that make sense? So that's just an aside. I just want you to understand that this is not rigid. These are basic possibilities for organization that work, that I have found work, that improve writing, that give students confidence. But if you are going to get stuck on this, it is almost better not to use it than to believe that everything has to be specifically this in this particular way. I'm going to stop talking because I think I'm going to start to ramble. Okay. Then we have the conclusion. The conclusion has what I like to call the 3 R's. You are going to restate the thesis. Let's keep this consistent and put this in all caps. Restate that thesis, right? You're going to review supporting points. The supporting points are what? These topic sentences. And again, when you get to this point, you could be reviewing kind of all the supporting points together. You don't have to go through like, and this in paragraph 1 and this in paragraph 2, right? You're not going to be listing them necessarily. In fact, it would be better if you didn't list them. But you want to make sure that your audience remembers that you had a reason this was true, and that reason was all the work you did in the body, right? So it can be kind of a nod to all that work that you did. It's kind of like summarizing, it's closing your argument. If you were a lawyer, this is your closing argument, and your closing argument is never new information. It's always going over everything you already proved. And then finally, relate to world. This part I don't really like, and you don't really have to do it. This is similar to the hook, in that it's like broad and big and wide and not necessarily essential to an essay, especially a literary analysis essay. Like, I don't want you to land on this big grand statement of, and that's why symbolism matters to all of us, right? It's not like a Miss America speech, right? But if you're having a hard time closing out, you can remember you can get a little bit broader in the conclusion. So you're never introducing new information, but you are kind of showing why all the work you did matters in the bigger scheme of things, okay? The shape of an essay is an hourglass in a certain way. And let me show you what I mean by that. The hook and your opening is very broad. It's general. It's big. It's like a huge embrace. It's pulling in people, right? It's pulling in information. It's appealing to the general, right? But then as soon as you get to background, it starts to narrow. And then when you get to thesis, it's really narrow, because the thesis is specific to the thing you're writing about. It is specific to your text, okay? So it's no longer universal. It is text-based. A lot of students make a mistake of, even in their topic sentence, writing universal truths, like human beings will always fight. That is not an appropriate topic sentence. Your topic sentence needs to be rooted in the text. So you would need to say, in the poem such and such, we see evidence for the fact that humans always fight, right? You're really specifically linking and rooting it in the text you're working on, right? So the rest of this kind of area in your body is as tight, right? It's specific to the text, right? And then when you get to the bottom, by the time you get down to relate to the world, it is general again, right? So the body, all that work here is specific to the text, and then at the end it gets broad. My computer's about to die, so I think I need to end this video, and I'll try to upload it. I don't really have good Wi-Fi here, but let me know if you need more help on that. I will post another video that has a student example essay to show you all these parts. All right, I will talk to you soon.